the name of the channel, but the slogan of the channel is just "Life is cool."
It's cool.
Life is rad. So yeah, this is just gonna think of this more as a conversation than an interview, because interviews are awkward and stiff, and no one enjoys them.
Most definitely.
Whereas conversations are chill and you actually get more out of them.
Is there a way for me to not be sitting?
Oh,
It's better. I'm not slanting that way.
are you comfortable?
I am until the bugs come.
Yeah, they'll be here to
That's the only thing that I thought about. Last night we were doing a barbecue bonfire, and man, the no-see-ums and the mosquitoes at like 8:30 were bad. So
Well, hopefully we'll.
definitely tolerable right now.
Yeah, I think the rain will keep them down a little bit. It's pretty classic Juneau weather. Oh yeah.
Heck yeah.
But just to get started, could you say who you are, where you're from, your occupation, that kind of stuff?
Current occupation?
Yeah, sure. Current occupation.
Yeah.
We'll start with that.
So my name is Andrew, from all up and down the West Coast, but originally from Northern California, outside of San Francisco in the East Bay. And then I went to college up in Eugene, Oregon. I was in Oregon for quite a while. Moved to Alaska back in 2019. Currently working as a bus driver tour guide for Alaska Coach Tours in Juneau, Alaska, capital of this great state.
Living the dream, right?
Living the dream, absolutely, man.
That's what we like to hear.
Yep.
All right, fantastic. Like, the whole point of this interview is just the slogan of the channel is "Life is cool," right? And I think people overemphasize the wrong things when they talk to people. I think they talk about like, oh, well, what do you do for a career? Tell me how you make money. Tell me about all those things. I try and get through to something a little bit further behind that. Obviously, like, nothing too crazy personal. And at any time, if you've got a question that you don't want to answer or anything like that,
Just open the book. I have nothing to hide.
nothing to hide. All right, well, we'll see about now.
Dig deep.
Dig deep. But no, I like to talk to people about their lives, because that's what we are as humans, is individual stories, if you will. So, right in the ear.
In the ear.
Right in the ear. Hopefully they'll stay off for 20 minutes or so. But to open up, what is something that you think was a key point in your life that brought you where you are right now? Like, was there a moment? I'll wait till the plane goes by before you answer that. I can cut out sound after the fact and edit things, but that's going to be tough.
I was wondering, there must be a degree of editing that goes through this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of sound playing, chopping it up to get the good bits, but yeah, besides that, it's good because I suck at editing, so you know. But no, was there like a point at some point in your life where you felt like your path changed, and that led you to where you are right now? And if so, like, what did that look like?
There are a lot of things that I can draw from. Real quick, so I now work as a bus driver tour guide. I did work for nearly 10 years in corporate healthcare as a medical device sales rep and clinical specialist. So my life definitely took a hard left turn at some point, going from the corporate world to more seasonal employment and just literally embracing everything that life has to offer. So to pick a single moment when it all changed would be pretty tough. But the biggest one, so I had dreamt of Alaska, living in Alaska for a long time, but it seemed really difficult to make that dream.
Keep going, I'll edit it.
It's a jet ski. It was really hard to figure out how to make that dream a reality, being stuck in kind of corporate healthcare. My relationships, my career was all back down in Oregon at that time, so I was consuming, all the Alaska TV shows and documentaries, dreaming about this life, and just
binge watching Alaska.
Absolutely. I'd get home from a long day in the hospitals, just totally not stoked on life. Just had to do, 12 hours of everything I didn't want to do. And then I would kind of get lost in the romanticism of Alaska. And pretty sure all that is like pretty powerful, like subconscious programming, and like somehow created some sort of manifestation, because lo and behold, I'm trying to pivot. I'm trying to leave one kind of crappy job in healthcare for another crappy job. I don't end up getting the other crappy job, but in talking to the hiring manager, she's like, man, it's really too bad you wouldn't consider a position as a clinical specialist. which would have been a step down from what I was doing, big pay cut going from sales to clinical specialist. So like it didn't sound enticing at the time, but the more we talked, it also occurred to me that she mentioned there was an opening in Anchorage, Alaska for a clinical specialist. So I had just been passed up on the sales rep job with this company. So I'm back to kind of being stuck in a job that I didn't like, still in sales. And it was kind of that light bulb moment where it's like, oh my God, she thinks I'd be great as a clinical specialist. They have an opening in Anchorage. That's not what I'm interviewing for, but long story short, like I called her the next day. I'm like, hey, you said you think I'd be a great clinical specialist. Would you consider hiring me for the Anchorage opening? And I was in Portland, Oregon at the time.
Yeah.
And she was like, absolutely. And so that was kind of the big like swing. I'd been in Oregon, kind of stuck in healthcare. That was transitionary on two fronts. It got me out of Oregon and up to Alaska, my dream. And it was my first step down, going from like high stress, high performance sales into a more balanced clinical role that then ultimately helped me transition out of healthcare altogether. So yeah, all said, that's probably the big one. Just like jumping on something that just felt right inside of me, like in my mind, and all of the feedback I got from family members, friends was pretty discouraging.
Yeah.
When I kind of made that announcement, it was like, you're gonna move to Alaska? You've never been there. It's cold, it's dark, you're gonna hate it. You're taking a huge pay cut. Like, I don't think you've thought this through. And they were right. I didn't really think it through that much. It just felt so good, right? Like life is cool. Like it just felt like so rad. It lit up this this spark inside of me that had been so just kind of muted for so long. So that's probably big.
What did the transition look like? Because I think, like, I know for me personally, I have done some things that people called stupid, and like taken some risks that people would be like, are you sure you sure you want to do that? And like for me, I've never had any regrets, but most of the time there's like kind of the falling from grace period, if you will. Like you make a decision, you go to a new location or a new job, or you start on a new adventure, and you kind of fall into reality of like, oh crap, like this is what's going on. This is my life now. And like 9 times out of 10, I'm happy to say it's been worth it in my life. But like, what did that transition look like for you? Was it a tough transition? Was it easy?
It was tough, but it was also easy.
Okay.
Like letting your old self die to be born into a new self. So like the death process was hard, but I'm simultaneously being reborn, which was freaking awesome. So trying to reconcile those two things was very challenging the first couple of years, I would say. It wasn't a quick transition. I actually left healthcare once before, a few years earlier, just drop of the hat one day, just quit a job on the spot. Same kind of thing. I took 9 months off to try to explore myself and figure my stuff out. Didn't figure anything out, ran out of money, went back to healthcare.
Yeah.
And so this one up to Alaska was my second kind of transitionary phase. So I felt a little more prepared for it, maybe just given I tried once and kind of failed, but I learned a lot in the process. This time I felt like I'd worked on a lot of stuff within myself. I was more capable of handling a lot of the adversity, the fear, the risk that came along with it. But yeah, it was hard in the sense, for me, I took a 50% pay cut. So moving up to Alaska, trying to learn, okay, how do I live my life without the means that I used to? Turns out it's not that hard. I didn't need nearly as much as I thought I did. I just kind of inflated my lifestyle like a lot of us do. But and the other hard part was trying to find that new identity, which I think is something that I'm still kind of searching out. I haven't found, but I knew I was transitioning out of healthcare going up to Alaska. And so, I continued to try a lot of stuff, and some stuff worked, others didn't. I will also say that I had, the timing was interesting. I moved up there in late 2019, and so the pandemic hit shortly thereafter, which in a lot of ways for me, it turned out to be a blessing, because I was trying to kind of transition out of this corporate career. And so when the pandemic hit, I basically got kind of got furloughed. Like,
Yeah, you
I was
kinda
still
got-
getting paid, but I was being asked, don't come to the hospitals. Like, we don't want you to risk exposing yourself or exposing others. So if there's something that's super emergent and we need your clinical support, we'll let you know. But otherwise, like, you stay safe, keep us safe. So in some ways it was great because it gave me all this time to explore and introspect within myself, play around with lots of ideas. I went back to school and did online schooling. But yeah, in terms of that transition, there was a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. A lot of folks within my like immediate circle were super confused and didn't know how to provide support or advice or counsel because no one else had kind of blown their life up like this. But at the same time, it was a lot of that. I was learning how to step out of the sort of victimhood mindset and take more like self-ownership and understanding that the power is always within myself. Like, it's all in my choices and decision making. So it all kind of came together at a beautiful time. But yeah, it was certainly scary, but at the same time, like, exhilarating, refreshing, new. So it was like kind of both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of points there that I could talk about. I should preface this by saying, like, I always write down questions before I interview someone, and 99% of the time I never look at the questions that I've written down.
Kind of goes some direction.
Because I mean, like, I learned a really good, like, I can't remember who taught me this, but it was actually a negotiation tool. And that is, when you're going into a negotiation, never, ever, ever mention what you need. Like, you can mention it in the context of, like, hey, these are deal breakers for me, etc. But it's more important for you to mention what you can give to the other person, but only ever to say it the way they want to hear it. So you talk about what the other person wants. And so you have to listen to the person long enough to figure out what the other person wants. Because if you come in there and say, I'm going to make you a lot of money, but the person that you're talking to doesn't want to make money, they want to make their customers more satisfied, it's not going to help.
Right.
And so every time I'm interviewing something, I will write down questions, but then I get there, I can like feel the vibe a little bit. And it's like, okay, well, these probably aren't the things that we're going to gain the most value out of it in this conversation. So I've got my book, but I'm probably not even going to use it. Now you're curious.
Yeah.
It's like some things that I talk to people about every single time is like kind of where you got where you are right now, and then what you believe that you've learned that you wish you could talk to other people about, and then what kind of gives you hope and fulfillment in life. Those are kind of like the big three that I usually try and hit on, because with everybody that I've talked to, and I've done this a couple of times, but with everybody that I've talked to, there's similarities and then there's also like key differences in between their answers on those ones.
Yeah, for sure. See that.
Because I mean, like,
questions.
but I want to talk with you about money for a second, actually, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because speaking selfishly, I'm 22 years old, working on college, working on paying for stuff, all that stuff. There's obviously a ton of pressure from the outside world telling you what you should and shouldn't be, how you should and shouldn't spend / waste your time, etc., etc., etc. And as someone who's gone from the corporate world, kind of, you seemed like you were a good student. You just kind of give off those vibes. I don't know, but you seem like you were the kind of kid that kept his nose clean, went through school, got a good job, was following following the good life path, if you will. I'll put that in air quotes, but
Yeah.
following the good life path, and then you just kind of realize, hey, wait a second, this isn't my fit. This isn't what's fitting me. And so, like, what would you say? And if you don't know the answer to this question, that's totally chill, because I don't either. What would you say is the balance you found in between, like, building something and just kind of experiencing life?
It's a good question. And I think I'll preface like all of my answers with like, ultimately, I don't know anything. So I'm gonna give a lot of like thoughts and ideas and things that I kind of believe to be true like right now, but really I'm still pretty confused about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But what was the question again? How did I find the balance between building?
Well, it's
and
because you spent a long time. You spent years of your life in kind of like this building and making a name for yourself, carving out your little corner, if you will.
Yeah.
What people would call living the good life, which is like setting up security, setting up, retirement, housing, all that fun stuff. And you stepped out of that into freedom, which doesn't have as much security, but obviously offers something that you're attracted to.
yeah.
So what would you say as far as like Like, is there balance in between those two that you found, or is it just kind of, yeet one way or the other?
I mean, I think a lot of that's just unique to the individual. So I think for myself right now, I feel like I have been able to create a lot more balance in my life. I don't know that everyone would feel the same way if they did the same thing. I think part of it for me, I feel like it just kind of clicked. So like building versus like living an experience. So I feel like before, when I was in the corporate world, it was a lot of building so that I could live and experience someday.
Yeah.
Whereas today, my focus seems to have flipped, and I'm much more focused on living and having experiences. And in a roundabout way, I feel like that's building towards something in the future. I'm not as focused on what I'm building towards, but it seems like the way I'm applying and investing in myself today is building towards something. I'm just not aware of it. So I'm not as focused on the outcome. I'm a lot more focused on the process, just day to day. How can I live my best life? How can I express the best version of myself? How can I continue to feed my curiosity and wonder? And somehow that's all building.
Yeah.
And it feels way more balanced versus before it was like, okay, how do I build the assets, the relationships, the reputation, all of that, so that someday
when I'm
I can
60,
have exactly. I'll have the security and the
resources. You can take a cruise through Juneau, Alaska, and you and your wife can tip the bus driver good.
Right. So yeah, I guess just getting out of that mindset of being regretful or fearful of the past, or and constantly dwelling about the future, and like never really being present in my life is what it felt like. You're always working towards the future, or you're stressing out about something that's in your past, versus now in a place of much more just like the totality of acceptance, and just like I'm really good with where I'm at. I can take 100% responsibility for all the choices I've made, and I'm good with it, and I'm much more focused on just like here, like the extent of my future planning right now. Like this is a great example. I signed a 3-month contract to work as a tour guide in Juneau because I wasn't sure where I was going to want to be after that. Gave me the freedom now to go try another short-term contract someplace else. So just embracing living more in that presence and not trying to just control something so far out. I don't know. Something to that effect. But the balance is, it's never there. I don't know if you can ever find the balance. It's constantly a work in progress.
I'm a Christian. I'm a very devout Christian. One of the leaders of my church gets asked this question by young guys all the time. Like, how do you find balance? Because in his own right, he was a very successful businessman before he became a leader in the church, and he just says you don't. And he's like, there's no such thing as balance. If I'm working on hanging out with my family, I'm not doing work. Like I'm hanging out with my family. If I'm studying something, I'm not making money or hanging out with my family. It's one thing at a time. And I feel like that actually correlates quite a bit with what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Like you're living life one thing at a time, one day at a time, one project, contract, whatever you want to call it at a time. I'm gonna check the camera real quick to make sure it's still recording, because I have had a couple of times where it's just like stop recording. I'm like, no, I missed half the interview.
I would say too, like I've cultivated much more self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and an ability to listen to the little voice inside, like that intuition.
Yeah.
So I'd say in terms of like finding balance, that was something where like in my past life in the corporate world, my heart, soul, intuition would like talk to me and like tell me like you need to slow down, you need to rest, it would give me hints, and I would ignore it and just keep plowing straight ahead down a very imbalanced kind of self-destructive path. Mm-hmm. Now I have much more patience. I've learned how to listen to my own kind of inner compass, and I think that has helped tremendously as well in terms of at least feeling like I have some semblance of balance and influence over that.
Okay. Talking about balance has kind of made me think a little bit about success and failure, because I think that's two subjects that we hear about all the time, especially growing up. And I apologize if this all seems kind of effective towards me, but I have my own thoughts about my life and where I'm at in life. But people will talk a lot about like success and failure, and I got to be honest, in my life I've never really seen what those two things look like outside of their extremes. And like, do you think that, what am I trying to say here, like as far as success and failure are concerned, I think people are terrified of failure, but I also think in my personal experience failure is the only way that you learn. So like, have you seen that in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've learned way more from my failures than I have successes. Yeah, they make much more of like an indelible, lasting impression. They force you to go back, reevaluate, ask how things could have been done differently, or just re-perceiving a situation. So yeah, just because of the emotional like residue that's left over from all of that, definitely. I also, where I'm at today, I don't know that like success or failure for me personally are really even, they're not things in my life anymore. In the past, I did aspire to be successful, but the problem with that is it's somebody else's definition of success, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to live up to somebody else's standards, and it just keeps moving because there will always be somebody with more, just as there will always be somebody with less. So you never get there.
Yeah.
And because it's not your own definition, like if you set your own benchmark of if I make this much money or whatever, you make it really like objective, then maybe you could achieve that success. But for the most part, I think a lot of us, success is not something that's coming internally. We're trying to measure ourselves to the standard that's coming from outside, and it's a moving goalpost.
Yeah. There's a quote, I think Epictetus said it. It was either Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius, but he said like never seek approval from outside sources, because like everything's from within inside. Like if you're looking for approval from somebody else, it's never going to actually be sufficient to make you feel better or give you actual satisfaction in life.
So that's, I mean, for me, the last however many years that I've been going through my own kind of journey and self reinvention, so much of it has just been the inversion of, I'm pretty sure for a lot of us, we've lived in kind of an upside down world where we put everything on the outside, right? We're so concerned about what other people think and not nearly as concerned about kind of what, you know, our truth is, or our genuine wants, needs, desires, our values are.
Yeah.
And so the last few years, just learning, doesn't happen like right away, but I don't really care what other people think, but just because I know who I am now, and I know I'm a good person, and that's kind of all that matters, and I feel like it's reflected in how I carry myself.
Yeah.
And
I will say, like, the first time I met you, it's just like, wow, that is like one of the smiliest, happiest looking people I've ever met.
Yeah, it's wild, man, because it's funny how really simple it is, and it's the same like common theme and thread throughout all of the scriptures and religious texts, like judge not lest you be judged, treat others as you wish to be treated, like love thy neighbor. It's not that hard.
It's not that complicated, guys. Come on.
It gets complicated because a lot of us, it's whatever. There's a lot of propagandizing, things are being marketed, sold, but once you kind of remove all the layers of the conditioning, you kind of get back to the core essence of yourself. You're kind of like, yeah, I love everybody, and like it helps having context to draw from. I have gone through my own adversities and stuff, so I can relate a lot more to people.
Yeah.
But yeah, just it was a little off topic with success and failure, but
well, no, I think that directly ties into what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I'm not bothered by what people think, because ultimately at the end of the day, I just want to love everybody, and it starts to get really clouded if I get really concerned that someone might not like me. Then someone that confuses that, and so it's like, even if you don't like me, I mean, for some folks, you can be too bubbly, too friendly, right?
Yeah.
It's like some people, they haven't said it to my face, but some people are probably like, dude, that guy's like he's too friendly, it annoys me. And I get that, like that's cool. I still love you. I'm still gonna be me. Like I'm not gonna change who I am to try to please you. So, yeah.
Like, that reminds me kind of a little bit of confidence. Like Like, I know for me, I was very, very, like, I was always wanted to be an extrovert, especially growing up, and like, you hit those teenage years, and everyone talks about how rough the teenage years are. Yes, they're rough. But like, would you say that that journey of like confidence, of like kind of that inner self, knowing who you are, and kind of like knowing what matters to you in life, and not really having to seek approval from outside sources, where do you think that came from for you? Like, how do you think you got there? Because I think for a lot of people, they're really looking for that sort of validation, but they're not sure how to bring it out of themselves. That's why they're looking for it from outside sources.
It's a good question. It's not going to be any one thing in particular. I started gravitating towards particular content on social media. I started reading certain books. I've always spent a lot of time alone. I love being outside in nature, so I spent a lot of time hiking with my dog, just being outdoors. So having that time to, I mean, it took years. It took years, but just slowly but surely, like just unpacking everything and being able to get to that place where I was able to turn my attention inward. But it was a lot of stuff: documentary films, books, social media content, influencers, and then just spending a lot of time with myself, trying to understand, just getting more, getting deeper and deeper into myself, trying to understand the causes underlying the effects that I'm experiencing in thought, behavior, emotions. That's been big too, understanding the relationship between cause and effect.
And would you say, like, when you were kind of finding that out, did you find anything scary? Like, anything that you didn't really want to know? Because I've met quite a few people that it's like, yeah, I know I need to change that, but I don't know. It almost goes back to like what we were talking about beforehand with like the fear of starting something new and doing something different.
Honestly, I would say no for fear.
Really?
I don't think I found anything scary. So much of it came as a relief. When I was able to re-perceive things, it helped me better understand. So, I was formally engaged. That engagement ended. That was something that was particularly traumatic for me, and I wrestled with that for a long time. But then being able to re-perceive all of that, look at it from different angles, to understand the aspects of myself, my darker self, to accept my own behaviors that have become manipulative, that were motivated by feelings of insecurity, lack of self-worth. It all started to make sense. For a while there, I wrestled with that relationship ending. I felt victimized. I didn't want it to end. So I was resistant, angry. And then the more I unpacked it and was able to kind of impartially or objectively evaluate my own situation and see, oh my God, these were my behaviors that in those moments I wasn't that aware of. And if I was aware of them, I just ignored it and continued anyway. And same thing, I had a toxic work relationship, and I felt so victimized by my manager. But then the more I got to the kind of the truth of myself and some of the things that I was doing in the context of that relationship, I was able to better understand and appreciate why he was the way he was, why our relationship was the way it was. So no, I don't think it was fearful, because I think deep down I always knew that I've always known that these are parts of me, just as they're parts in all of us, right? We all have like the equal capacity to express good, evil, light, dark. Like, it's fundamentally just a choice, I think. I think I always knew that darkness was something that was inside of me. And then when I was able to kind of hold it and accept it, acknowledge it, and then play it out in the context of those relationships, everything made more sense. And I felt less like a victim.
Yeah.
And I was able to take responsibility. Not that any of those things were my fault. Like, the relationship ending wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
It was partially my fault. Like, I had I had a part to play in that.
Yeah.
In the same way that this toxic relationship with my manager, it wasn't my fault, but I definitely had, I was culpable in that.
Yeah.
So, seeing those like shadow aspects, those darker sides of myself, no, I don't recall them scaring me. I remember those being really refreshing and enlightening.
I like that you pointed out that those are like uncomfortable truths, though, because I mean, like nobody like, because I feel like when we are super insecure And like I honestly, personally would say that this comes a lot of times through like schooling and stuff like that, because nobody wants to be the weird kid. Nobody wants to be the odd man out. Everybody wants to fit in. Everybody wants to be liked. Everybody wants to be the cool kid, right? And I think we carry those emotions with us a lot. And I know a lot of the most unhappy people that I know are still really trying to play that same game of, I want to be the popular kid in school. But I like that you pointed out that it's like everything that you said is like immune to those sorts of people pleasing, kind of like, oh, I'm never going to admit that I was wrong, kind of childish behavior, if you will.
Yeah. Now, but not, I mean, that's the thing. I was that person, right? Like, I was the person that was square peg in a round hole, trying to fit in all along, when now I'm trying to fit out. Like, I'm not trying to be anything other than myself, but I had to have kind of those experiences to now have the perspective now where I can look back at both and like be able to reconcile those two. But yeah, I think a lot of us are suffering because we're being inauthentic. We're trying so hard to, we're operating from a place of lack, of scarcity. We don't feel like we're worthy. We don't feel secure in ourselves. And so we're doing so much to try to get that from the outside, which just puts you in the position of weakness. And the more you can flip that and learn to love and accept yourself from the inside, like, it'll all come eventually. Like, everything's reflected and projected.
Yeah.
So if you can start to do that inner alchemical work, learn to love and accept yourself from the inside first, people outside of you, like, it's a weird, like, energetic relationship where other people will love and respect you the more you love and respect yourself.
I feel like there's kind of like the placebo effect of trying to act more confident, you know? Like, if you go in thinking about how scared you are and how insecure you feel, you're gonna see reflections of how scared and insecure you look to other people. Whereas if you hype yourself up and think about how confident and good you look or something like that, in the context of, like, I don't know, going to a party or something, you'll have that experience. You'll see that reflected in I think there's a lot of truth to be said that you live in your own world. You live in the world that you create, right?
Very much so, dude. Very much so. That's been very powerful as well. Like, understanding that consensus reality is kind of confusing. I'm still not quite sure if there is a consensus reality. I feel pretty strongly, just based on my own life's experience, like, oh my God, my world is very much like my world, unique to me. Like, I see it through a unique prism or lens. And that's awesome, because ultimately it's a result of me. So it's, when I'm in a bright, beautiful place, the world out there is bright and beautiful. It's awesome.
Yeah.
If I'm doing things to steward poor health and imbalances in my life, oftentimes things get dark, and so I don't feel good inside, and that's reflected in the world I see outside. It's wild, but also empowering. But unique, like, we do all have our own little realities. Like, I can't think of an example right now. Like, but yeah, it's so true.
Eventually, we all just are living our own episode of the Truman Show, right?
Yeah. Yes. Straight up. Yes. Very much so. I like that.
I mean, like, because I know for me in my life, I was homeschooled all through. Like, I was homeschooled since I was like 13.
Okay.
So, like, right just after starting middle school, I got taken out of school. Not because I did anything wrong, but I didn't like it. It wasn't what I wanted to be in, and my parents were kind enough to let me, make that choice for myself. It has come with some challenges because I wasn't a good student and had to teach myself how to study. I'm still teaching myself how to study 10, 12 years down the road, but it's interesting because I see things a lot differently than people my age. It's evident in almost everything I do, because people just my age have certain things that are important to them. Be that, like, the simplest things, like even just like the music taste that they have. Like, my music taste is much more comparable to my parents' generation than it is to my generation, because I just hung out with my parents and listened to whatever they were listening to.
Yeah.
But no, I think you're 100% spot on in the fact that just, like, we live in our own spots, and we can get really caught up in our own echo chambers if we're not careful,
Yeah.
Well, I'll do the last question that I was gonna do. because we've been running for over 30 minutes now, and I know McKinley's gonna get pissed off. Steal his car for too long. But like I said at the beginning, the motto of the channel is life is cool, right? And for me personally, that means trying to evidence to people who, you know, we talk about those places that you don't really want to be anymore. You know, you do the growth, you're working on your self-improvement, your self-love, and now you're in a position where you can kind of balance those two realities, right? Of who you used to be, who you are now, and kind of who you want to be, and the life you want to live. The main point of interviews like this is to show people that, okay, no matter where you are right now, life itself hasn't changed in its ability to show you that you don't know anything, or its ability to fill you with wonder and all this cool stuff. Yeah. So the last question that I'll ask you is, A, number one, do you think life is cool? And A, number two, if yes, why? And if not, why not?
Yeah, life is definitely cool because I don't understand it, but it's all like there's so much to learn. There's nothing to figure out. Like, I don't think there's any like penultimate or like ultimate like truth thing that we have to figure out. There's just an infinite number of things to learn, and the whole thing. I mean, I get weirded out looking at like my hands and like trying to understand like how this is magic. Yeah. We are magic. This is all magic. So yeah, life is cool, and why? I think because it's a freaking mystery. It's a freaking mystery. It's not a mystery to be solved. It's a mystery to be lived. Like, I think so much of what steered me astray in the past was thinking, you know, just kind of buying into the idea that we were the apex of human, you know, evolution and advancement. You know, we've almost got it all figured out. You know, drugs and technology are amazing, and you know we're gonna
pretty soon we're all just gonna be living cyberpunk, and it's gonna be great.
Pretty much, right? And it turns out it's miserable, and there's no soul, there's no life in that. And so the more I've again kind of dropped fear and just embraced that this whole thing is a very weird, bizarre, mysterious dance that I feel like goes on forever, the more I've been able to embrace and celebrate that mystery, like the cooler it gets and the more stuff I'm shown and experienced. So yeah, life is very cool because it's a mystery, and mysteries are cool.
Fantastic, bro. Well, thanks for giving me a full close to 40 minutes worth of absolutely prime content, even though we had dogs and jet skis and stuff. It's fine.
Yeah, that was not horrible, but there were some moments of intrusion, but
it's fine.
I was fine. It's like it distracted me. So we'll see how it goes.
I mean, I hope this was a decent experience for you. I hope it wasn't too bad.
I love talking, and I love talking philosophy. The only thing that's challenging about this is that I'm doing more of the talking, or all the talking.
Yeah.
So not having a chance to like, okay, here's my ideas, but now what do you think? Like how do our ideas differ, or how are they similar? So I like balance in conversation, that I like to learn as much as.
That is fair. Sometimes I have to like full on hold myself back from like, because every time you're saying something, it's like, ooh, that correlates to this idea, this idea, and this idea, and I have to like just stop myself and be like, okay, because I mean, something I learned is that people will tie up points, right? And unless you cut that line of thought, they'll bring it together.
Yeah.
You know, we're designed to like talk in complete sentences and, you know, bring complete ideas together. And I find also, like, because I have the tendency to interrupt people, if I talk too much or too quickly, I really miss out on probably the best part of what they were gonna say.
Yeah.
If I want to just say, oh wait, I also have a thing. I was actually interviewing the first guy I ever interviewed on this channel. His name was Zoran, and he's a blacksmith from Germany. It was when I was in Latvia, actually. He was one of the instructors there, and I interviewed him, and he talked about storytelling on the trail, because he had hitchhiked across the world. He didn't full circumnavigate the whole thing, but he started in Germany, went down through over a little bit of Africa, a little bit of the Middle East, went over to South America, and then hiked up through the Amazon, and then came up all the way through America. through the U.S. and Mexico, and then went back to Germany and finished his journeyman certificate as a blacksmith. But he talked about storytelling along the trail and how is a typical human communication is to tell stories. That's how we define the world sometimes, is through storytelling. And I'm guilty of that too. I'm a storyteller. That's the whole point of YouTube. That's why I write. That's why I take videos, is to tell stories. And he just said in the times that he was out on the trail, he noticed that it was all about the story, and it was all about the human aspect of the story. And he hates the way that people travel today, because they travel so that they can one-up each other's stories. And he's like, I don't know anything about like science or biology or mathematics, but if you can tell me a good story, a human story about science, math, and whatever,
Yeah.
he's interested in it.
Yeah.
And so I have to stop myself from just taking my opportunities to talk too often, because you miss out on chances to learn. But
It's an art and a skill, like having to be the interviewer for sure. But yeah. Kudos, man.
well, thanks so much, brother. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Alma. Right on, dude. That's fun.
Yeah.
Now we should talk more philosophy in real life.
Absolutely, yeah. Without the cameras rolling, right?
Yeah. Well, that's pretty. It's not noticeable. It's not really. I don't know.